Hi, and welcome to Arts District Boston's live interview Thursdays. Today we're interviewing a multi-talented artist who is a painter, ceramicist, and experiential designer. Please welcome Shavana Green.
All
Hi,
right,
Shavana.
Bryn, how are you?
Great. Thanks so much for coming. Just going
Yeah,
to turn my volume up a little. All
I'm
right.
gonna get this light for a second.
Okay. And I see you have some of your artwork behind you. That's awesome.
Ooh, I have some right over here, and then of course I have lots of friends' artwork just kind of hanging around.
Yeah, I know you work with lots of different mediums of art making. Do they kind of overlap and influence each other, or?
Yeah, I think so. I went to like a very interdisciplinary school, so the program was really just focused on pushing people to do things that they normally wouldn't do. So I feel like a lot of my graphic design work sort of lends to my creative work, and then it also sort of informs my ceramic work. It's all kind of full circle.
That's really cool. Okay. Do you want to kind of tell us about your artwork and show us some of it, or?
Yeah, sure. I have a couple people to me, and my work is in school. It was really conceptual, so it was really focused on the Black experience or my Black experience. Whereas the work I'm doing now is something a little different. It explores more of like the feelings that I have and sort of placing them onto canvas or to paper. But I have a framed piece here, which I really love.
Oh, wow.
Is this lighting? This lighting is sort of here. Let me do this.
I know these things are so sensitive, but I could definitely see it. It almost looked like a landscape or like
Oh well, okay.
the
So
moon.
let's move this over. I'm just gonna hold this because it'll be a lot better.
Okay.
Yeah, so the work really ranges, and I feel like so this is sort of the imagery that I had a few minutes ago, but it's more of a sort of abstracted colorist sort of exploration of what it means to feel sort of free and alive. And then I have another piece which is a little bit more colorful, which you can probably tell a little bit more of. Yeah.
These colors and forms are really nice. Where do you get your inspiration to make these kinds of art pieces?
I think my inspiration really just comes from my friends and to my like own experience. I'm always just really interested in sort of figuring out like what can be done and what can't be done. That's something I'm really interested in sort of exploring.
That's cool. And how do you explore that? Just
Um, I read a lot of books, I talk to a lot of people. The pandemic has been really tough, so I feel like on the one hand, I'm not like really speaking or seeing people in person a lot, but I feel like I've been able to sort of explore my own environments and understand like where I want to be in my artist practice and like where I see myself going, I think.
okay. Yeah, you talked a little bit on the phone about the role of education in your art making. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I feel like anybody can be an artist, and I think that's just really important to drive home. I think a lot of people think like you have to go to a fancy school and you have to have all these connections. And though I did go to a semi-fancy school, I feel like it's more just about like how much you want to learn and how much you want to sort of showcase and like expand your skills. So I love the idea that like art is accessible for everybody.
And where did you go to school?
I went to school at the Art Institute of Chicago. The School of the Art Institute of Chicago has a very long name. I was really lucky to be able to go there and to be able to sort of meet all kinds of different people and to figure out like what my artist practice was. And even like it's been a few years since I graduated, but it's totally shifted. But I think like the stability of my program really has sort of uplifted me and kept me going.
Yeah, are you originally from Chicago?
No, I just went to school in Chicago. My dad was in the military, so we were kind of like all over the place growing up, which probably informs the way that I like anticipate color or the way I like focus on color.
So what brought you to Boston from Chicago?
I actually got a job as an experiential graphic designer here for a company, like a well-known company. And it was just this really interesting opportunity. I had the opportunity to either move to New York or move to Boston. And most people were like, go to New York, like there's stuff up there. But I was like, there's something really interesting about this job and this job title. So a lot of people probably understand graphic design. It's something where it deals with typography and vector graphics and illustration, and we see it every day in our normal lives. But what I do as an experiential designer is I actually design for spaces. So I'm designing for, you know, large corporate companies, large online retailers, trying to figure out like who they are and like branding their space and understanding who they are so that we can retain talent and get them new talent.
Does your work with experiential design overlap with your artwork at all?
I think so. I feel like the sort of color, like the colorization that I use in my experiential design, I noticed that a lot of it actually comes from my paintings without me even knowing. So like you're using tertiary colors and then you add maybe like something really chromatic and really like rich in color, and it sort of just, I don't know, it sort of just flows. I feel like it's pretty general. If you go to my website, I feel like that's somewhere where you can see some of the overlap, but yeah, I feel like they do overlap. And I feel like there could not overlap.
Yeah. So you said you're kind of trying to like push the limits of what you can and can't do. What is your process like when deciding to make a painting and going for it, or even a ceramics piece?
Yeah, a lot of procrastination. I feel like that's part of it. I feel like, I don't know if it's the artist in me or the designer in me, but you sort of wait till the last minute, you figure things out, but then you get like these really cool breakthroughs just because of it, because you're like sort of in a time crunch.
That's great. Yeah, you talked a little bit about your journey becoming an artist. Can you kind of tell us a little more about that? Like what kind of artwork you made in school and where you are now and where you plan to go maybe?
Yeah. So my artist journey has been really lengthy, and it's really shifted paths and faces so many times. But for me, it's all about like a learning experience. So making art is something that I really enjoy and that I really feel like adds to my life in a way that I haven't experienced with a lot of other things. Like some people love sports, some people love, you know, doing one thing or the other, fitness, whatever. Like my thing is definitely art because it's so expansive. But I think my art sort of shifted when I was in school because I really focused on like the Black experience, my Black experience. And I was trying to figure out like, what does it mean to be a multicultural sort of like bi POC woman who looks a certain way and like talks a certain way, and just wondering like how that sort of plays into society. So a lot of the work I was doing was more sculptural. It was a little bit more conceptual. It dealt with harder subjects that, you know, were things I had been thinking about and I didn't really have answers for. So it was really good to be able to sort of explore that in an environment where like everybody is so supportive in art school. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, that's not good, or I don't like that. But like for the most part, people are really supportive of whatever you're going through, and they can relate in some way. So it was just this really cool process. And I don't think I would be creating the artwork that I am making now without that experience.
Yeah, I saw on your website you made a noose out of glass. That's so powerful. And it's cool to see how your art's changed as you've grown as an artist.
Yeah.
So when people see your work now, what kind of messages and feelings do you want people to see and kind of feel?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I don't really make art for other people. And I know that sounds really weird because I do make art for people, and I do sell work and I do put it out there. But initially, like the thoughts and feelings and desires, they all come down to whatever I'm trying to learn or whatever I'm trying to process. So I think like process, specifically like trauma processing, pops up into my work quite a bit because there's like stories that I can't really verbalize that I'm able to sort of showcase in a different environment.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to the bad lighting. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, get comfortable, please.
I know. I'm like,
We'll be talking for a little bit, I think.
I know.
All right.
My apartment's really dark. It always has been. And like we talk about getting lighting and such, but it just, I don't know, we're vampires.
I know, my house is so dark too. I actually take a lamp from the other room and like put it in front of me.
I have one and it's very low. So.
I know. Something about this is just kind of tricky to get right, but it looks fine. I can definitely see you. And I like your art in the background too.
Yes,
It
please.
looks beautiful. So when you make ceramics, you were telling me on the phone that you were like, you had a goal for your ceramics, and can you kind of tell us about that? That was really cool.
So I have a couple ceramic pieces here, but I did ceramics for a little bit, just very lightly. I touched on it. And then once I sort of moved here, I just happened to live across the street from a ceramic studio, Mud Flat. And I was just so lucky. I was able to take classes there. I think continued learning is something that I'm always really interested in. And I love being in that environment because there's so many people in that building who just know so much. And it doesn't matter, like, I'll try to make the perfect piece every single time, and like that's just not ever happening for me. But it's like I come up with things that are sort of interesting. Like this was everything I have plants in it because I'm a plant lady. But this particular piece, I was trying to do a specific like texture and it didn't quite work out. So I just started like pushing it out and pushing it away. And so you get some really interesting sort of like color combinations that happen when it's inside the kiln. But I noticed myself working a lot more with like neutral tones, whereas my paintings are all like lots of blues, lots of pinks, lots of contrasting like sort of reds. So it's just interesting that I'm like, it's all colorless and all the paintings are nothing but color.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you have is it just the material? You're more focused on texture or?
I don't know what it is. I feel like I'll go through cycles where you make a bunch of stuff and then you have it fired in the kiln and everything will be beige and I'm like, what is going on? And it's like, I don't know about it. It sort of like happens. As you can see, it happens a lot. Like,
wow. Yeah, these are really nice.
But here's another piece that was a little bit different. I was just sort of making bowls and I had like my little logo, which is super silly. But then I have, like pieces that are just funky and weird. Like, I don't know if I could ever recreate this, but it was interesting to create it in the moment.
Cool. Yeah. That's great. I love what you say about trying to create the perfect piece and then also kind of just going with the flow when you create this.
So to be perfect. So it just, I go in with the intention of like, I'm making up the perfect weighted material. I want it to be looking like this, but in reality, it comes out looking as whatever it does. Or you kind of just get rid of it and recycle your clay and sort of like continue. So it's just clay. They always say that at the studio, like it's just clay.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. So what direction do you want your art to go in the future? Do you have any, where do you see your art going?
This year has been so weird for everybody, I'm sure. Like, it's just I think it makes a lot of people think about like who they are and what they bring to the table and sort of like how does the world benefit from me and how do I benefit from the world. But I think as long as I'm learning, I think that's what I'm really focused on. Like, as long as I continue to learn, like, you're going to continue to make art. It's not really about like selling paintings or being in a big museum or whatever. It's just more about like making the work that makes sense in the moment. And a lot of the times I'll look at my work and I'll just be like, ugh, that's ugly, or like, I don't like that. But I'll leave it alone. I'll put it in a portfolio for a little bit and I'll open it back up and I'll see a bunch of other paintings that look really similar or have some of the same like strokes. So then you start to build like this alphabetic language for your painting process. But like for me, it's always just about like learning. The more I can learn, the more I can sort of be out here experimenting. I think that's the part that I like about art, that you can experiment and sometimes it doesn't work out. Most times it does not work out. But for that 1% time, you get something, you're like, wow, I did that. Like, I did that.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of cool to leave it alone and then come back and realize, oh, it's done. It looks like it's done, you know? Yeah. So I'm actually I've been distracted by your painting behind you. Are you using like mixed media, like printmaking? And I think I see some like oil pastel on some of your painting.
So yeah, I kind of just mess around. A lot of it's just dry. Like if I'm doing acrylic anything, like I'll start over. When I started out, I did oil painting. That's sort of how I learned. That's how I learned to mix colors. And like acrylic was sort of made fun of. I feel like a lot of people make fun of acrylic. They think it's like the cheaper byproduct. But the cool thing I like about any sort of acrylic paint is that you can add so many different like variables to make it thicker, make it thinner, make it bubble up, make it feel like it's just a quick wash. Like there are so many different things you can do with it. A lot of my painting is utilizing water as a vehicle. So I use my paintings are very wet initially. But this particular painting, I think, yeah, this is just a screen print, I think.
Oh, okay.
Of course, I didn't want to paint, so then I was like, I'm gonna print on a screen. So I just like created some shapes and sort of like went for it, but it turned out really good. And actually, initially, this was all just sort of it's like clouded over, but I scraped it off because I didn't like it. And of course, like that's the look that I thought looked the best. So it's like stuck with me. I've had this probably for like 6 years.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, yeah, the patterns in your paintings and your prints, they're so vibrant and fun. I love your work. So what kind of projects do you have coming up in the future? Do you have anything you're working on now or?
I'm working with a native tribe in Wisconsin. So for my experiential work, we work on facilities and places. So interiors, so we're working with that team. So we're building out this amazing recreational center. And I'm so excited. I feel like this is the most exciting thing that's happened in my career. I've worked for a lot of companies, like well-known companies that people know, but to work for a tribe, that to me is just like top level. And it's really exciting because they want original art and like they get to sort of dictate like what goes up and they have control over the entire space. So it's not like someone's coming in and saying, this is what's going on. All like they're totally in the same process. So that's been really cool. I have a lot of weird, odd little jobs I do, but one work I'm doing right now is just like for a large meat packing company and they wanted like some cool graphics for their cafe. And so like that stuff, you get the like sexy things and then you also get like sort of the different things that you're not really used to. So those are two things I'm working on. And I have a commission for 4 paintings for a very fancy house on Martha's, and that just came to me, like it just kind of fell in my lap. And I'm super excited to sort of put my design and my art together to see sort of what comes.
That's great, Shavana. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see all this work you have coming up. And so I'm kind of done with my questions. Maybe we should open the floor for questions and see if anyone watching has anything they want to ask you. Do you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, sure. I can see all my friends here, so I'm like,
Yeah. You know, sometimes people ask questions, sometimes they don't.
yes, my friend Shane, he's about to come up with a question. I can tell. But yeah, maybe I can show you a couple more pieces while we're sort of hanging out and waiting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a piece that I really, really love. Sort of,
Oh,
but it's all just about like how there's transparency within the color and sort of seeing things that don't really belong. I love the idea of like having a very bright, loud orange, like just simple line and having,
it's like a shadow.
yeah, it's like this. See, I use like just whatever's around me. Like I don't really look at anything, paint it, but it's more of like what feelings kind of evoke. Like you make a mark, and then you make another mark, and then you respond to that mark, and that's sort of how I go about painting. Because I don't really love painting from realism. I don't love painting like landscapes. I feel like it's already there. Something that's to me is being able to refract that piece of information or material and then put it onto like a canvas or onto paper. I always laugh and talk about how I'm always doing like little samples of things. Like everything's a sample, but in reality, I'm like making these little tiny paintings and trying to figure out like what color combinations go together, or, like what makes sense, what would surprise and delight people. That's sort of where I'm at.
Yeah, that one you just showed is beautiful. And we actually do have a lot of questions coming in. So one of them is, do you think about the human illusion when you create your paintings?
The human illusion. I don't know what that is. Is it like the facade that we put on?
I'm not sure. Let's go to the next question for now. Where can we see your art? Do you have a website or is Instagram the best?
Yeah, I have a website, which is shavanagreen.com, and that has a lot of my experiential design work. It has some paintings. It has a lot of the conceptual work I sort of spoke on, sort of woven in some of the areas that they play. But also Instagram's always good. I'm always posting like stories about like my process and what I'm doing. Yeah, anybody can have, like communicate and check it out and, talk to me.
Cool. All right, the next question. Do you listen to anything while painting or making art?
Yes, I like everything really loud and I also like to screech out the lyrics. So I'm constantly like singing and dancing and like I'll take a couple minutes to take a break to sort of like get it all out. But There are other times where I just listen to classical because it's super chill and I sort of like I don't hear it and I feel like I can just focus on the work. But for the most part, I'm listening to like true crime podcasts on my on my headphones. I am paid.
Yes.
Nobody knows what I'm listening to, but I look like I'm working.
Awesome. It seems really meditative, like you're getting a lot onto the paper.
Yeah, and like sometimes you like have an angry moment where you're like painting, you're frustrated, and you can see that coming to light. But then I usually feel like pretty calm when I'm finished, sort of.
Yeah, that's great. So how did you get the word out about your art and generate interest for those recent commissions?
Honestly, I'm really bad at like internet things. I feel like I'm good on my website and I'm good on like the professional aspects, but I just sort of like talk to people and then I put the work out there. Like I just put it out there, and that's kind of how I've gotten every commission. I recently had an old coworker that worked in the interiors environment reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's this showroom. They normally have paintings up. The painting sold. Can you bring this down this afternoon?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I took the paintings off my wall. They're like probably 4 by 5 feet, and we strapped them to the top of his roommate's car, and we like held it and like pulled it down, and then I was able to get my paintings up, and you kind of just have to be open for that. And another like that other commission came from just someone that I used to work with who like I saw that you put some stuff on Instagram, like, and I went to your website, and then I sort of I'd love to have a piece. I also have a lot of pieces that just come to me through like Instagram. Like I'll just have people be like, "Hey, I didn't know you painted," and then they'll pop right in. We'll make something happen.
Nice. Really cool. Okay, we have a lot of questions now. Do you have a number one dream experiential project?
Wait, say that again.
Do you have a number one dream experiential design project?
Ooh, I haven't ever thought about that. I think I'd like to do work for like maybe Prada or Gucci. I feel like their graphics are usually out of this world and so imaginative, and they always use like different materials. Um, but I don't know. I can never really picture what the perfect project would be. I feel like something that would help people, maybe something that would help people, because a lot of times it's about aesthetics and it's about branding and it's about like making a certain environment available. But I'd love to be able to do that on like a human scale for just regular people who are out and about.
Great. That's great. So how do you balance your personal creative direction against the client's needs?
It's a lot of trial and error. I find that because I'm a designer, I'm very malleable in terms of if someone's like, "I don't like that." That's something that I have to, I'm sort of working on myself, but I find that like just listening to your client, touching base with them, asking a lot of questions, and providing them with a lot of options. Maybe you're starting out and you're like, this is the color palette I'm using, or like, do you want more white space? Do you want 60% more white space than you do color? Or what's the interior of your space looking like? So I think for my design experience, that's sort of where that comes into play. But for the most part, whenever I get commissions, I either like had a piece, they saw it, they liked it, and they picked it up, which is my favorite because then I don't have to like deal with anything. But there are instances where they're like, no, like I want you to do whatever you want, and like whatever makes sense for you. But I always think about the person in their home because that's where it's going.
Okay. And last question for now. How do you combat the anxiety that comes from perfectionism?
Therapy. I love therapy.
I know. Artists are all perfectionists.
I don't know what it is, but I feel like as a society, we really push this idea that perfectionism is what we should be aspiring to. And I just like had to not like unlearn that. I don't think that is healthy. I don't think it makes sense. Like again, with my ceramics, I'm trying to make the perfect piece and I never do. But it's like I have to be okay with this thing that's not perfect because it's made by a human hand. But I think for me, it's getting the idea out of your head that you're not experienced, or you don't have your stuff in a gallery, or you're not in a museum, so you're not a real artist. Like, I don't like any of that. I say like dead that. If you want to make work, make the work. And if you don't want to show nobody, you don't have to show anybody. For stuff, I didn't put it out there at all. So like, this is ugly, this is ugly, this is ugly, this is ugly. Like, I don't like this, I don't like that. My old work, do I need to connect it still? Like, I make work about like the Black experience. And it's like, I had to just, you know, shut that down a little bit, bring it back, and tell myself, like, you can explore and you can create stuff, and it doesn't have to be perfect every time. And I think a lot of the time when you're putting out all those like weird pieces, you'll have like one perfect piece to you that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like telling yourself like it's okay to make weird stuff. I think that's kind of what I.
And especially sometimes like you put out a piece of art that maybe you don't like and someone else falls in love. So you really, you know, you don't know. Last question. Do you feel pressure to post work on social media frequently? I follow so many artists who post all the time, and it can be daunting thinking you have to, I don't know, keep up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that, especially like maybe younger artists who are a little bit less experienced or don't have their name out there in the way that they see other people. Um, I try to put the work out there that I like. I tend to make a lot of work at one time. So I'll just, when I'm free, I'll just take photos of all of those pieces or all of that stuff. And then I'll sort of save it in a favorites folder. And then when I want to post content, like I have it sort of available. But I'm not trying to post one thing every day because that would drive me crazy, and trying to figure out the algorithms and what's the right tag. I think that in reality, like your success is sort of written in what you're like making, what you're producing. So I would just focus on the producing part, because if people like your work and you just put it out there, like they're going to follow you, they're going to support you. I've had people be like, I can't like pay you, but do you want to do a trade? And I'm like, yeah, let's do a trade. You know, like there are so many different ways to just talk to people, even if they're someone might just be like, I like your work, can't afford anything right now, but just want to let you know. And like that's such a nice boost for anybody.
Cool. Well, you've said some awesome stuff. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. This was such a great interview. And unless you have anything else to say, I think we can wrap up.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate just being able to like speak to what I'm doing. I know the lighting's real bad, but you know, nothing's perfect.
I think your art's pretty close. All right. Have a good one. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.